Reproduction electronic. It went away.
Okay, Mr. Chair, tape is rolling.
Okay, thank you.
January 11th.
Yeah, I'll call the January 11th, 2022 annual meeting of the West Dakota Water Development District to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oops, sorry.
There. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call members. Dan.
Okay, roll call for January 11th, 2022. Cole.
Here.
Bjerke.
Here.
Driscoll.
Here.
McGregor.
Present.
Nautigal.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
All present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Moved by Dan Driscoll. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Scott. Discussion on the motion. Any changes? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is approval of the minutes from the December meeting. Linda, that's your item.
If there are no comments or suggestions, I would just look for someone to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Very good. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Moved by Dan Driscoll. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Cheryl. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 5, conflict of interest disclosure. Are there any items on the agenda this evening that any of the board of directors would have a conflict of interest? Please say so now. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, election of officers. Dan?
Okay, we have two possibilities. Last year, you just did the whole slate, voted on the existing officers, and made them the new officers, or we can run, and obviously they have to want to be in that position, or we can run ballots. So I don't know how
Okay.
you want to.
Dan?
I would move that we retain our current slate if they would all be willing to serve.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
A second.
Seconded by Scott. Discussion on the motion.
I assume everybody's willing to
I was just going to say that.
hang in there.
I'm willing to serve, but I would also step down if somebody would like the secretary position.
And I would also continue to serve. And Ron?
Yeah, can come behind Linda and say, I'm willing to serve, but if somebody wants to be the treasurer, they can certainly take over.
And how about the vice president?
I will
Vice
serve.
Chair.
I will serve unless someone would like to take over the role.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Is there any other discussion on that motion for selection of officers for this year?
Thank you.
Have you, is that the motion there?
Yes, motion by Driscoll, seconded by McGregor to accept, this is last time, so. Let's get the voter to accept the current slate and designate the officers as current Chair Bjerke, Vice Chair Mack, Secretary Harris, and Treasurer Coe. So that's the motion I have here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Thank you. Moving along to item 7, designate the official newspapers for this year. The three that are listed there, the Rapid City Journal, Hill City Prevailer, and Wall Current are the ones that we currently use as our official newspaper. Is there a motion to continue to do that?
So moved.
So moved by Tom. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Linda.
What do
Discussion
we
on the
pay
motion.
for each of those a year?
Pardon me?
What do we pay for each of those?
I'll have to ask Dan.
Let me think, primarily this year's gonna be a little more because we have petition announcements. In a normal year with just the budget, it's less than $100. The Journal's the most expensive, but it's still less than $100. The other two, I think, are around $50. I could look them up.
$100, what, a month, a year?
No, this is just per legal notice that we post.
Per publication?
Yeah, so
If we have.
for example, the budget, we have to publish the budget 2 times before our August meeting. And that's really the only expense, but like I said, this year we'll have to publish that the petitions for the elections for the odd-numbered districts. So that would probably be about twice that amount then.
What is the total, do you know what the total amount that we pay for all 3 of those newspapers?
Would you like me to look it up?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
You can quickly.
That way everybody knows.
Legal notices last year were $221.80. So this year it'll probably be about twice that.
For all 3?
Okay,
Seems awful low.
did I answer your question?
Yeah, that seems awful low, doesn't it? Do the Hill City Prevailer and the Current, are they still publishing as actual newspapers, or are they online?
I guess I don't know that.
I think they're weekly.
That paper? Okay. Any other questions? So the motion is to approve these 3 newspapers for this year. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried.
And who was the second on that?
I was.
Hey.
Got it?
Yep.
Item 8 is the treasurer's report. Dan?
Okay. So this is through the end of December. And revenue to date, which would be all the revenue last year, which would be the tax levy, and the interest was about $231,000. And expenditures, which is everything except projects, was about $68,700. Project expenditures were about 100 water projects, $190,000, and that brought the total expenditures to $258,736. I'll move on if there are no questions.
Where did we cover the excess in project expense from?
You mean the budget, I suppose?
What money did we use to pay that? I mean, it wasn't in the budget, so
Oh, we just,
It was-
savings.
it was just in
So
savings.
Our savings got
Okay.
depleted a little bit, right?
So basically, we overshot the budget by about, what, $10,000?
Let's see,
Just a little over.
negative 48,000, that's what I got here, I think.
But but we
made
made,
up
but we were about 10,000
That's the project.
under on
Right,
administration.
yeah,
So
so that,
total, we had 38.5.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, so the admin side, we're under budget by about almost 10,000, so.
Yeah. And so that extra, we just paid out savings on that.
Right.
Okay.
So these are the list of the projects. Again, as normal, the 125,000 from Green Valley is still not known exactly when we'll spend that, other than we suspect that will be this year. And given that and everything else, the unpaid project obligations are about 194,000, which is just the sum of that right-hand column there, which has the balance due on each of those projects. And I just put we don't need to talk about this unless somebody wants to, I just put our budget up here as reference, so we have that. I guess the key item there is, let's see here. I got this set up. Probably the key item here is that this is the tax levy, the projected revenue is about almost 231,000, and then we would probably get about 2,000 in interest, so that's our working capital there. And our projects that we had listed at the time, back in August when we did this. Here's just a pie chart of our money. So nothing has really changed too much. We have a 24-month CD at 0.55% interest, which will be coming due in August. The 12-month CD at 0.2% interest will be coming due in May. And then we have two savings accounts. They call it the Extreme, which is 0.2% interest. Which is interesting, that's not any better. The CD isn't any better. And then we have savings with a lower interest rate than the checking. So currently, when this was printed out, we had about 560,000 total assets.
Is this all at the same bank?
Yes.
And what bank is that?
It's Black Hills Community Bank. And this is a report that's required by the state. If we make less than 250,000, we don't have to do an actual audit. We can get by with a relatively simple report. So this will be, if our treasurer agrees with it, not necessarily right now, but I have to send this in by the end of the month. And it's basically just lists our project expenses for the year, admin expenses, so it's very similar to the treasurer's report. And that's all I had. If there are no questions.
Are pages 14 and 15 the same thing in our packet?
Looks like they're the same.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're the same, but they're...
Well, there's actually, I see now that I missed the first page, which really has very little information on it, so you're getting 95% of it there. Sorry about that.
Again, on page 14, in the heading, it says for a year ended December 31, 2020.
Oh, okay.
Should be 2021.
Thank you.
There you go.
That's what you do when you just use a template, because that's what happens. you for.
Are there any other questions for Dan? Treasurer's report. Go ahead.
I'm looking at on page 11, on the 2022 projected budget of 153. Is that already allocated out?
What was the question?
Well, that's,
For the projected project budget for next year, for this coming year, on page 11, it says 153,732. That's what it is. Is that money already all allocated out?
not really, it's just listed there as an estimate of what we think our projects would be.
Okay.
So there's nothing in a special fund, if that's what you're asking.
I just wondered if if we wanted to spend some more money out of the budget.
Yeah,
There was extra
these
money.
budgets are non-binding, because a lot can change between August and the start of the year when we actually start using this money.
Are there any other questions for that treasurer's report? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So movement.
Moved by Scott, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Cheryl? Seconded by Cheryl. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Dan. All right, let's move to item number 9, approved funding request for the 2022 Western South Dakota Hydrology Conference. That's going to be held on April 27th. There's information there provided by the U.S. Geological Survey on kind of some historical stuff, and we historically have contributed to that conference. Probably about as long as this organization has been in existence, and help fund part of that conference. Usually it's for like the major speaker at the luncheon. Is that what it's going to be used for again this year? Or part of the pot?
Sort of not.
Okay. Anyway, before you take the floor, is there a motion on that item? If not, I'll make a motion that we approve the request for $2,000 for the 2022 Hydrology Conference. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Scott. Now, if you want to say a few words on behalf of the USGS conference.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Galen Hogestrap from the U.S. Geological Survey, but actually,
You could stay by the
where's the mic right there?
You could move it.
For the record, Galen Hogestrap from the U.S. Geological Survey, but actually here, taking that hat off, I'm actually representing the planning committee for the Hydrology Conference. So the Hydrology Conference, as Dan mentioned, has been going on for, I think this will be the 21st year, and West Dakota's been a part of it ever since the beginning. So kind of describe a little more about the purpose, but for those unfamiliar with it, it's a conference that brings together researchers from university staff, federal government, local governments to kind of share what's going on in the world of, it began as just kind of water-centric, water resources, and over the years it's kind of expanded all kinds of earth sciences, whether that's energy development and fisheries and other things like that. So we still call it the Hydrology Conference because that's what it's always been called for many years, and that's what we're continuing to call it. But as you were mentioning, the sponsorship request is $2,000. That's, you may recall, last year we had to go virtual for it, so basically we cut everything in half. So we were $1,000 sponsorship from West Dakota last year. We're going back to an in-person event this year, back at what's now called the Monument. So it'll be the same rooms. We're going back there, so we're going to go back to our normal sponsorship amount of $2,000 from West Dakota. And as you kind of mentioned, in previous years, the West Dakota has always kind of sponsored the luncheon speaker and covering travel expenses, things like that. This year is a little different. The tentative plan for this conference is we're going to have a special session on the 50th anniversary of the 1972 flood coming up. So the luncheon talk will actually be kind of a panel group discussion of just some speakers that experienced the 1972 flood. And it's just going to be more of a kind of a storytelling session as opposed to like a keynote speaker. So we're not going to have a keynote speaker that we have to pay travel expenses for, something like that. So it'll be a little bit different this year with our special session on the 1972 flood. But I think it just keeps it simpler that way, just to have it as more sponsorship as opposed to, trying to just pay for the luncheon speaker. So another thing I'll mention, just to clean up a few things with registration, little tweak this year, I put in there, if this is approved, the $2,000 sponsorship will also include free registration for all board members and staff. So there won't be any other trying to pay for additional registrations, or in the past we've done like half price fees or something like that. It's just going to include
two free
yeah,
ones and every
we're
half.
just going to simplify and say it includes everybody.
Okay.
And
So-
does that include the luncheon as well?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's a $750 value if I'm thinking of it like that.
Okay, is there any questions for Galen? Scott?
How many people do you expect to attend?
So on a typical year, we've always said about 200 to 300 people is what we usually get. Not always all at the same time. They kind of come and go. The last 3 years have been challenging. 2020, we canceled it completely. 2019, we had a blizzard that wiped out half the schedule. So we really haven't had a typical conference in the last 3 years. But going back to the olden days, it was always, 200 to 300 people in person.
Any questions for Galen? Any questions in general from the directors on this item? Seeing none? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
1 no from Wendy. Thank you, Galen. Okay, item number 10, approve funding for the game fishing parks aquatic invasive species boat inspection program. Ron Polk, what's your item?
Yep. At our last meeting, and it's reflected in the minutes, Jake Davis from the Game and Fish was here and recapped, the efforts that were conducted during 2020. There was 10,000 boater inspections done on the local reservoirs. And they were successful, I guess, in stopping a number of potential infections from aquatic invasive species, primarily zebra mussels, from becoming established or at least becoming introduced into the water here in the local area. And so today, Jeremy Keentz is here. Jake is ill, but they have a plan to conduct similar efforts in 2022 on the local reservoirs where there's a significant amount of boating activity. And in your packet, there's a budget there, and you can take a look at that. They're asking us for an increased contribution this year in order to conduct a similar scale of operations as they did last year. Due to some changes in their funding mix, and Jeremy can go over that, but they're now requiring a match, whereas last year the Bureau funding did not require a match, so now it's a 25% match. And you can see in that display on page 18 that even if we just focused our efforts on the reservoirs that are in Pennington County, the money that we would contribute at a $20,000 level when matched with the Fish and Wildlife Service generating $80,000 doesn't cover the efforts for the Pactola, Deerfield, or Sheridan reservoirs that are all in Pennington County. So that's sort of my introduction, and Jeremy can go over any other items he wants to go over and bring to our attention before we consider this request.
You want me to go now or wait for motions? Or?
No, go ahead, and then we can make a
Okay.
motion following your presentation.
Yeah, so sorry that Jake couldn't be here. He did want me to express just our gratitude for the contributions that you all have already made. So a couple things here. Like Ron said, the funding mechanism has changed. Last year we were primarily operating off of a Board of Reclamation grant. This year that's switching to what we call the QZAP, the Quagga Zebra Action Plan funding. The difference there is the Board of the Bureau of Reclamation did not require matching funds, whereas this QZAP is going to require 25% match. So for every dollar spent, we'll have another $3 to go towards this invasive species plan. Jake did want me to also relay that the funding that would be provided through this organization would only go towards those Pennington County reservoirs. It would not be spent on those other counties. The last item, as you look at those numbers, Jake had this in as $20,000 coming from South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. That would be essentially the same as what we were asking you for. That's a gross underestimate. That is only factoring in the funds that would come from, or the match that would be provided by the time spent by conservation officers. So that would not include Jake's time, myself's time, Tanner Davis, our invasive species coordinator's time. So when we start to leverage that, our own contributions will start to tick up as well. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Scott's going to ask a question.
Looking at, on page 18 of the packet here, the numbers on, I assume it's a budget.
I was going to ask the same question. That 383, is that what you're talking about? $383,040 on the expense side versus $271,976 for revenue. What's the difference there? How does that happen?
Yeah, to be honest, Jim just got sprung on me just yesterday. So if you've got some.
All right, Lindsay, go ahead.
So the bottom one, that's the cost of what they're projecting for employees that would be hired to run those inspection sites. The top one includes like your salary or your wages and Jake's wages, and I hire people for the project, so I'm a part of this too. But so that's the difference.
But you're still $111 short. Where's the money coming from?
I think these are just two separate projected expenditures.
But you can't spend what you don't have.
Yeah, that was my question, is that the revenue is $111,000 short of the expenses. That's what you're saying too, right, Scott?
Yeah, exactly.
And I would agree with that. I mean, based on these numbers, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
And I would say that, anything beyond that is going to be on the department to fill in that gap.
Okay, Randy?
So Game and Fish doesn't pay for this necessary type research and the salaries that go with it?
No, so we are paying our individual salaries out of other grants. So essentially for what you're seeing here, this Quagga Zebra Action Plan, we're just leveraging portions of our salaries as a match for the federal funds. So as a funding source, that federal QZAP funding is asking for match from us. And so that $20,000 of our salary and time spent by our primarily law enforcement officers, is just being used as match to get $60,000 of their funding. So you see that their game fish and parks receive $500,000, and so, but that $500,000 needs to be 25% match for us to receive that.
So if I understand you, what you're saying is, on the expense side, you're not showing the in-kind contribution from the game fish and parks in terms of dollars for other staff members?
I believe
Something like
that's
that?
the case, yes.
Yeah. That was a little confusing when I'm an engineer, so you're a math guy. Any other questions? Dan?
I think we really should have a motion on the table to enter into discussion, so I'll move that we, move forward with this funding request.
The 20,000?
Right.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Ron. Okay, discussion on the motion. Wendy?
So this benefits a mass amount of people, and the majority of Pennington County, and okay, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the only reason I would vote for it. It's not for an elite group of people. It's not for just the directors on this board getting to go to a conference at $750 a pop. It would benefit an entire huge community of people, and that's why I would vote for it.
Very good. Any other comments?
Just to recall some of what Jake provided to us last month, is that he had a map up, and it's not in the packet, but right now western South Dakota, which of course includes those big reservoirs in Pennington County, are not identified as being infested by these invasive species, which is a really good deal. Now eventually that may take place, but the slowing of that timeline is beneficial in terms of maybe there'll be control mechanisms that come online as we can slow that spread down.
Yeah,
and so
didn't you say it was in East River?
there are a number of infestations East River, and so.
But it hasn't got out here yet.
No, the way people travel with their boats now, these inspection stations are an important element of trying to keep Wester River and Pennington County reservoirs, free of these species.
How about Wahi? Is that inspected?
Hawaii?
I think it's infested.
It's inspected, but it's infested. Lake Sharp and down below is infested. I'm not sure if
It's not
Hawaii.
officially infested.
Connecting waterways are, right?
Lake Sharp, Lake Francis Case, all along the Missouri River, up to the dam at Oahe are infested. There's widespread belief that they probably are infested in Oahe, but not officially as of today.
And?
I think it's inevitable that we're going to see infections out here too, and from that standpoint, we might be pouring money down a drain, but regardless, I think it's the right thing to do, to at least make an attempt to do what we can at this point in time, and afterwards we can say, well, at least we tried.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's probably, and Jake said that too, it's probably going to be here at some time, but there's I was in the water business for pretty much my whole career, and that, like Lake Michigan, has been infested for years, and it's a huge expense to the water users, like city municipal systems. It clogs up their intakes, and they're spending a tremendous amount of money every year trying to, going down there and cleaning, paying money for divers and that sort of thing. It's been going on for a lot of years, but if they get here, there's going to be an expense to the water users to maintain operation of the facilities. So.
Well, and to Ron's point, Ron made a great point that, Game Fish and Parks has never been in the business of trying to stop zebra mussels. It's slowing the spread. And for every year that we slow that down, the research starts to catch up a little bit as to how we can, mitigate impacts to infrastructures, water resources, and all that. So.
Okay. Any more questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Motion, Mr. Pardon me?
Dan?
Oh,
I'll just want to say for the record, as I did last year, I'm going to vote against this because I just don't think it really fits within our statutory authority of what we're supposed to be doing. It's a great project and I see the benefits of it. I just don't feel that it's really within our bailiwick of what we ought to be doing.
okay. So there is a motion. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign.
Aye.
1 no from Scott. Motion carried. Thank you. Nice meeting you. Item number 11, consider funding request from Pennington Conservation District for cost share of $50,000 in their Conservation Initiative Strategy Project along Rapid Creek. First vote, this will be the first vote if we decide to move forward with the vote. And Dan, just so that's your item.
Right, so we had looked at this item back in October and decided to defer action on it until sometime in 2022. So here we are. Everyone's seen it before. The proposal that is in the packet here is identical to the one that we had seen earlier. I've got a little bit more information to provide, but I'll just, before we get that far, I'll just start out by making a motion that we fund this over a 3-year time frame. I think Dan's got the wording of a motion up there that I had given him, so up to $50,000 max over a 3-year time frame to be a partner in the Conservation Strategy Project along Rapid Creek.
Okay, the motion has been made. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Thomas.
So,
Discussion, go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
yep, just a bit more information. I'll keep it pretty brief and then open it up for discussion. But I think one of the main ingredients in the proposal was that the cost share that we would provide would be used to provide at most 1/3 cost share for any given producer. The way the project would work, basically producers, landowners are able to apply for this. You don't know ahead of time exactly what they might be applying for. There's a number of different conservation practices that can qualify. There's kind of a formula for how much funding that can be provided through the grant. The grant comes from Nrcs, I believe, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and it's basically jointly administered, is my understanding, between Nrcs and then the Pennington Conservation District. And they're the ones that kind of evaluate these projects and determine the amount of funding that can be provided through the NRCS grant, and typically then there's a shortfall remains that any given producer has to come up with funding on their own. So there was a constraint provided in the proposal that we would provide at most 1/3 cost share for any given producer. So in October, the reason that we just deferred on it was there were a fair amount of questions about how this project would really work, and asked us to basically come back with additional information in the future. So there's a handout here that basically has, I guess I called them stipulations, 3 stipulations. Director Bierke, Director Koth, and myself met last week with Lindsay Mader from the Conservation District, and it's Justin from the NRCS, and talked more about how this would really work. And we thought that perhaps we could set a few more sideboards on this. So basically, one of these would be kind of from an administrative standpoint. If we would fund this, basically the Conservation District, who would administer this financially, would set up an account into which we could put money so that they could track it. So then we would know at the end of a year what were specifically the projects and type of conservation measures that were funded by the West Dakota funds. And so, in essence, since it would be a 3-year deal, we're saying that we could put about 1/3 of the funding in at the front end, and then the conservation district would be able to track that throughout the course of the year. So at the end of the year, then the conservation district would come back to us and provide accounting financially and progress-wise on where these funds went, what sort of projects. We'd actually, every year they have a kind of a field trip sort of a process too that we would be able to participate in, and I'm sure there we'd be able to see.
That would probably start around year 3 or 4.
Oh, that would be late. That would be farther in. So anyhow, this would be basically just coming at the end of the year and tell us this is where the funding ended up going. So then, if we pass this as a first vote today, and of course, our bylaws require anything above a $25,000 amount would require 2 votes. This would require a second vote. Before we get to the second vote, we'd put together, basically an agreement between West Dakota and the Conservation District, which would be typical, of course, and a couple of the things that we thought would help with that for one, this agreement would specify that to the extent possible, the Conservation District would direct their expenditures towards conservation practices that align most closely with our mission. And another clause that we thought would be good to include in this, and this would be above and beyond standards things such as the funding amount, the time frame, et cetera, but another one would be that it would basically be a termination clause, probably primarily for ourselves, but I wrote it up for the district also, that if desired, either entity would be able to exit, after each year. If, for instance, we felt this wasn't really meeting our mission area, we could say, well, 1 year of this is enough. So that's what's in front of you there, and I guess
I have more paperwork here too.
Okay, Lindsay's got some more stuff, so we'll let Lindsay meet her.
For us, Justin, if you want to explain these papers for me.
Thank you.
So, Dan,
if you would state your name.
Oh, yeah.
And we got a microphone. There's a microphone there by Wendy.
There you go.
My name is, let me grab some of these so I can look at them and copy these. My name is Justin Borboom. I'm the Resource Unit Conservationist with Nrcs. So I supervise the Belfouche, Sturgis, and Rapid City office, and that's why I'm here today, since we're working on this project. To kind of summarize a little bit what Dan said, that we have this project in place for NRCS. Our funding mechanism is to look for local partners to propose projects, and the conservation did that to improve riparian area and upland along Rapid Creek. And so that's what this project is about, is improving that water quality, quantity and quality of the water in Rapid Creek, and then hopefully do a little bit of controlling on the flooding that happens as well. So, like we talked about last week, and they were a little concerned about what practices we were going to be doing with EQIP. And so if you look at this big spreadsheet, I listed out some of the common practices there on the left side of the sheet. And then NRCS, with our programs, we have to do what we call addressing resource concerns. And a resource concern is where soil, water, air, plants, animals are degraded from their optimum condition. So that's basically what this list across the top is. This is all the resource concerns that we'd be addressing with this program. And then if you look, the numbers underneath show how big of improvement those practices make on that resource concern. So this is kind of our NRCS's sheet to make sure that we're not spending money and doing something that's actually going to be hurting the environment. The second handout I had, I kind of talked about resource concerns. This is one with the green highlighting on it. This is just going to be, the ones that are highlighted green are the resource concerns that we are addressing with this project, or could be addressing with this project, and then it just gives a brief definition of it. And I just wanted to supply that because, it's just a different terminology than what people are used to, so you can kind of get a little idea on what we're looking for. And then the other handout that's stapled together, it has the different practices that we're going to probably be seeing in this project. And it talks about the resource concerns that we could address with those, because it's not, with our projects, it's not like if we put in a pipeline and tank, there's only one purpose for doing that. A livestock pipeline and tank could serve multiple purposes depending on the operator, the producer we're working with. So it just shows some of those common resource concerns that we use practices for. And then, the other one's just same thing, but it's just different resource concerns. So, I don't know, that's kind of what we talked about last week, and I'd be willing to answer any questions anybody has on how or why we're doing this or anything like that. Is that what you guys wanted, Dan and Ron?
Yep.
Yeah. Wendy, go ahead.
So I have several questions. Does anybody actually use the water to drink from Rapid Creek?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So how would this benefit then, and I have other questions besides this, but generally speaking, how is this going to benefit the whole of Pennington County for taxpayer dollars? That seems like quite a bit of money, and that seems like it's a third of the levy every single year that is that right or no? Do I have that wrong?
50,000 is the total over 3 years.
50,000, oh, okay, so
It's
I'm wrong on that.
Three-year program.
Okay. But it's still not drinking water for the community of Rapid City.
Well, Rapid City and Rapid Valley do use water from Rapid Creek, but it's above this particular section
Okay.
of the creek. But there are people that live along Rapid Creek that might have alluvial wells, a shallow well next to the creek. So you could kind of say they're drinking creek water.
Sure.
It's filtered a little bit, but
It's still not for the benefit of the entire Pennington County.
And this.
And I have
this-
a reason for asking that. And then my last question, just quickly, is there a template of this contract? Is there expectations, like there was for the Missouri River project, to account for time and payroll and where this money is going? And those are my questions.
I guess I don't know the answer to that. Do you mind, do you have something?
Sorry, Joanne Noyes from DEANR. Just to answer one-year questions about drinking water, I believe Rapid Creek is also categorized as recreation immersion, which means if someone's playing in the water,
Oh, sure.
then
Makes sense.
they feel that they're going to swallow some water.
Sure.
And that's our whole point to this project,
Thank you.
is to improve water quality before it gets into the creek. And we're doing that by, there's a bunch of different ways. Our ideal situation is that we're improving soil health, so we're using that soil to filter any, manure, chemicals, any of that into the soil and letting it go in instead of running off. That's our whole purpose, or what we're trying to accomplish. And in the grand scheme of things, this is the first phase of this project. We will be applying where it's going to move down Rapid Creek, but with how Nrcs sets these projects up, they want smaller project areas. So we're just starting with this first stretch of Rapid Creek, and that's where we're working at right
And
now.
that stretch is
Thank
from
you.
Jolly Lane to where?
Antelope Creek, and then it's the whole Rapid Creek watershed.
Yep.
So it's
Basically the
narrow,
golf
but
course
it's
to
long.
The golf course to Computer,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. But it's not
But then
just the creek itself, it's the whole area that drains
All the area
into the
that
creek.
Yeah.
So it's the
So
complete
the southern
watershed.
boundary is Antelope Creek Road before it goes back up.
So the history of the creek, it used to be a lot more curvy than it is now. And with erosion, it's sloughing into the creek too, which is making water travel at a faster pace and go deeper and create problems within the creek itself. So our focus is to help keep water away from the areas, and through, if you have plant diversity, there's different roots that go into the ground that help water filtrate better into the ground versus going off of it, or no-till. When you're tilling, it's like hitting concrete, and it goes right into the creek and sloughs in. And then this creek also feeds into the Cheyenne River, which is also Pennington County, and that's sloughing in at a rapid rate too. There's producers that might have too many cattle along the creek, so we would do what we call buffer strips, and we would fence out the creek and let it naturally restore and help cost share for pipelines and water tanks for the cattle so they can still get water away from the creek. Those types of things.
Ron?
Thank you.
Just a couple of items. This is being funded in a different mechanism, but I think many of us have heard of some of the 319 projects over in the eastern part of the state. Their objectives is very similar, is to try and treat upland and immediate riparian corridor areas to try and address water quality impairments that are in any given, water. The Big Sioux River is one of the ones they've been working on very intensively for a number of years. And if I'm not mistaken, Joanne can probably correct me or be sure I'm on track, but Rapid Creek in this reach is impaired both for sediment and E. coli. And so many of these efforts that might be employed, within that watershed area or the immediate, creekside area, like if there's, cattle right next to the creek or whatever, would contribute to reducing both sediment and E. coli that are part of the current impairment of Rapid Creek in this reach.
Dan, you had your hand up. You have something?
Right. I guess to me one of the selling points, and then my brevity, I kind of jumped over it, but the funding amount from Nrcs that's been awarded is up to $450,000. You can't go beyond that, and so I guess from my standpoint, when I look at 50,000 from us leveraging 450,000, that's where I best like to see our dollars, when we can leverage against other dollars, and it's a pretty good ratio. So that's, to me, one of the real strong suits here.
Any other question, Wendy?
And it's nice that they have access to that. Some people don't. Some communities don't, but I do agree with that.
Okay.
So to answer your other question, Wendy, we do not currently have a template for the agreement. It would be in the joint powers agreement form, and whatever you guys can suggest to put into that agreement on top of what Dan has also suggested, we can take a look at that.
Thank you.
And we'd have that available at the March meeting, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And just so you guys know, we kind of talked about, if you decide to fund, we talked about doing projects two different ways. One where, because I think Dan alluded to it, but our projects are competitive, and we rank everything that gets funded, and we start at the top and we work till we're out of money. So the projects we're funding are usually a little bit bigger projects. We could look at doing something where, if you guys want to set your money up where it's just solely for doing cross fence, something that's the only thing that producer wants to do, then that could be something, if you guys saw some practices that are most closely tied to your resource concern, or your concerns or your mission, we could have it where those are the practices we cost share, and we can do that as standalone practices where we apply the third. Or the other example we talked about is one of the things I'd like to see, because I think it will build on future projects, is we have what we call stream barbs, where you've all seen the big cut banks on streams and stuff, and basically it's building a rock barrier out into that stream, and it slows that water down so the cutting stops on those. And NRCS cost shares them, but we don't cost share them at a rate that's a good incentive for producers to do them. So the other thing I've done with projects similar to this is we piggyback money, where NRCS pays our cost share, and then if we want to make it where we're paying 90% of it, we could use NRCS's money and say we paid 60%. We could use your guys' money to pay the other third of it and make it a high incentive for that producer to do that practice. Because that's one of the things we talked about, is a lot of the other practices we do have economic benefit to that producer. Something like that doesn't necessarily have a huge economic benefit to a producer unless it's going in the exact right locations where they're going to save a barn or they're going to save some of their homestead or something like that.
Another question?
So I have a couple things. First of all, for the record, we're not always sponsoring projects dollar for dollar. So I think we know that. We're giving money sometimes where we're not being matched dollar for dollar. But my next question, to your point, which is really good. I mean, I think this is a great project, actually. What little I know about that kind of thing, but for me, fair is fair. We're not spending the money or doing the project with the benefit of someone being able to, how am I trying to say that? You know, like, we're not doing this for someone personally in their benefit. Is that
No,
an
it has to
accurate
benefit
statement?
more than
Yeah.
that
Okay.
person.
Uh,
That's a huge part of the NRCS.
Yeah, and that's what these numbers come back to on how they're going to benefit the environment. I will say, to be 100% straightforward, a producer might not be putting it in for, I'll just using a pivot as an example. That's not going to be part of these, but it's easy to, as an example. We cost share pivots. The producer might not be doing it to save water. He's doing it to save his labor. We're both mutually benefiting from the practice.
That makes sense.
Our reasons might be different, but we're getting good things for both of us
Sure,
out of it.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Scott, question?
What's CPPE stand for?
Conservation practice, physical effects. So it's just our way of saying how efficient those practices are. That's what this is, a CPPE table here. It's just pared down from our full version. So the numbers on here, it's 1 to 5, and the 5 being the most beneficial for that concern. 1's the least. There are negative numbers there, and that's, where we're not going to do a practice because the producer wants it if it's going to have a negative effect on the environment or on that resource concern.
Can I answer your question, Scott?
Yep.
Any other questions? Motion's on the floor here for approval of the $50,000 for this Conservation Initiative Strategy Project along Rapid Creek. So we'll take the vote on it. So all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Good
you.
job of explaining this.
Thanks for letting us come again.
Having the meeting with you guys, I had some doubts, as you know, but you
Yeah.
guys did a good job explaining it to
you.
me. Thank you. All right, item number 12 is approved funding for directors and an administrator to travel to Pier for the Water Development District, WDD legislative display, the East Dakota Water Development District and James River Water Development District meetings, and the Rural Water ATC. Is that that thing we went to? Same thing?
Yeah, the,
Annual technical conference.
Annual technical conference. Okay. So I guess it's under me. Are there any directors that would like to go? Because it's tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I've been to it twice. It is very informative, and you get an opportunity to see how two.
Is it every year?
Huh?
Is it every year?
Yes, it's been every year since I've been on the board.
Already this year.
So, personally, I actually learned quite a bit going down there, seeing how the other two water development districts run their meetings and so forth. And they had usually get speakers from different subjects that are appropriate for what we do here. So it is a very good educational program. I know Thomas has been to it, Dan's been to it, who else? And it's just us two on our existing board.
I guess I've been in my
Yeah, you've been to them under your former employer, but would you agree with what I said as far as learning a lot?
Yes, I think it's very worthwhile if somebody can take the time.
So,
As someone that went with Dan and the other Dan, it was very interesting to see how they work their meetings. I learned about conservation districts in your tree planting program and how that benefited the James River District with soil erosion and cattle runoff, and I thought that was very interesting. That's why I was excited when you guys came with the previous motion. And it's just also a good networking thing because you'll see some of the DANR people, and also you get to know some of the other board members that do the same thing that we do.
Yeah. Are there any directors that would have time to go tomorrow? I know Dan wants to go.
If you like me, I can go. The first part is the legislative display, so we'll, if I go, I'll set up the poster, and all the other water development districts will be set up on, I think it's the 3rd floor, and then we have donuts and stuff. East Dakota Water Development District provides those, and the legislators come by, and so we could talk about legislative issues that we're interested in, and there really aren't that many for us. And then they'll have the meetings of the other water development districts in a different place, and then the South Dakota Association of Rural Water Systems thing is at the Rakota. That's kind of the timeline of what's going on there.
I think we should have a representative there of West Dakota.
It's about, mileage would be about $160 for the round trip per vehicle, and
they provide lunch and stuff.
Yeah,
food's provided by not us.
If I go, I'll probably stay the night, but I'll be staying with Representative Mullally, so there won't be any charge there. I think she'll let me stay with her.
Better check on that.
I think if Dan's willing to go down there, that we should fund his trip down there and have a representative there from our West Dakota Water Development District. So, would somebody make a motion?
One question, where does the 42 cents a mile come from? That seems kind of low.
That's the state rate.
State rate.
Is that all the state pays now?
The federal rate's 56.
they're going up to
Pardon?
58.
The federal rate is 56.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's gone up for some reason.
The federal rate actually went down in the last year. It was 58, and now it's 56.
That's backwards.
Yeah, right.
That's normal.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I move to send our administrator, Dan Mullally, to the Water Development District legislative meetings for the East Dakota Water Development District and the James River Water Development District, and to also show up for the legislative display in the South Dakota Rural Water Conference, or whatever technically Dan has up for the approval. I know I kind of made it long-winded, so if you want to condense it to...
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second it. Discussion on the motion.
Well, Dan mentioned legislative topics, and one would be the Missouri River Pipeline Project, because I think there is a
Sure,
funding
yeah.
request to the legislature.
And there's the riparian buffer stuff going on, so Hunter Roberts is going to...
Yeah, he's going to be there. The secretary of the DE and is going to be there. One of the speakers. I think it's going to be a good meeting. No questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Have a safe trip, Dan.
Thank you.
No weather issues probably.
I know, it was.
This year.
This year.
There will be once it gets there.
The one year I went, it was bad. I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah. Getting there and coming back are always two different things.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
It's true.
I think it was both really cold one year.
Okay, item 13, report back from the committee charged with considering sponsorship of a forum as a special West Dakota Water Development District meeting to address current water issues. And this is for information only. Dan?
So, just to refresh everybody, the committee consists of myself, Bierke, Mack, and McGregor. We took the opportunity after our last meeting in December, after hearing from Glenn Kane. Glenn is kind of a project lead for, it's basically the Ellsworth Development Authority that is pursuing, in essence, construction of a pipeline that likely would have a water source somewhere near Blackhawk, basically along the fringe of the hills in north of Rapid City, likely with a pipeline somewhere close to the Pennington-Meade County border and leading out to the Ellsworth area to basically provide water for landowners there who've had wells contaminated by their contamination issue. I guess, so we did have a meeting. I don't recall what the date of the meeting was. It was before Christmas. We thought if there's going to be any benefit. Things are moving pretty quickly there, if everyone recalls. They're looking to begin construction basically August, September time frame is really their target. Our primary question to Glenn was, is there any way that West Dakota could really help facilitate development of this? I think the short answer was really there isn't. They are hoping to basically solicit additional users along the way to help share in the cost. Basically, the way their project will work is they've got basically a funding amount that to begin construction at least. Operational costs, not necessarily. If they can find other users along the way, it certainly would help to defray their operational costs in the future. Anyhow, it was a pretty informative meeting. I don't know that we really came away with any answers or action items. It looks like it's going to move pretty quickly. After that meeting was over, the four of us met in the hallway for about a 5-minute post-mortem, and I think our consensus was that there had been some thought that perhaps one of the things this committee could do would be to help facilitate the idea of could there be a pipeline like this with a source in the on the western side of it, and it looks like it's pretty well going to take care of itself. So I think our consensus was that we would look towards a forum that would not be focused on pipeline/water supply, and would be more of a general purpose sort of a special meeting such as we'd had a couple of years ago. And so we're not in a real hurry on doing that. I think perhaps probably our consensus was June might be a good time frame for doing something like that. So I guess that's where it's at now. Any of the other committee members want to chime in, they can, and if there's questions, that's fair game too.
Any questions from other directors that weren't at that meeting? Basically what this project is going to end up being is a rural water system, and they're going to have some type of rural water system organization to pay for the operation and maintenance of this line once it's built. And the big rush now is to get this thing built and take care of those people that have contaminated water supplies. And one of the questions that I had is that there's properties that are on the southeast side of Ellsworth Air Force Base that have contaminated water, and this project has been more focused on those properties that are like south and southwest of the air base. And they're talking to Box Elder about the possibility of maybe wheeling water through their system. This is a what if.
Yeah.
There's nothing in concrete, but at least they're thinking about how trying to take care
Where are they getting their funding from?
those other ones. And some of the Air Force has talked to those property owners, and one option would be to drill another well for these folks, and the water quality is not very good out there. It would be a lot better if they could hook onto this rural water system, and even like New Underwood. New Underwood needs water too. I mean, it could be expanded. I'm just thinking, I'm just talking out loud here, but there may be a good chance for some of the other people out there to get good drinking water that now don't have good drinking water, which are, part of our district. And the alignment, they have a consultant engineer and hire that's working on it right now, and they're trying to finalize the alignment of it. And as Dan said, some of it might be in Meade County, but I mean, eventually it's going to come into Pennington County in our area. So it's a fast-moving project, and quite honestly, I'm glad to see them getting something done.
My understanding of it was they've got the money to build the pipeline initially
Yes.
from the Air Force.
Oh, they did.
But that has to be spent within a certain window.
Correct.
And that window is rapidly closing now, which is why they have the target date of this fall. But then to go ahead and fund the future operation and maintenance, they're going to have to basically be a rural water system and depend on water.
They have
water user service fees to.
They don't, of course, they're talking to people, the consultants are talking to people who, are interested in hooking up to this water line as it comes down through here, so they're trying to decide where the best place, most cost-effective place to run it, where you have more users on it, which is good. But there's, the overall operation maintenance is, they need to get something figured out for that.
Because the first year or two could be kind of touch and go on O&M costs, but.
Well, if I understood Glenn right, I mean, the Air Force wants to build it, and then they're done with it.
Yeah.
They're not in the business of water. Wendy?
What district are they in?
What district?
Yeah, what
Meade
district
County, aren't they?
are they in Meade? Well, part of it's in Pennington, part of it's in Meade, right?
Yeah.
Which district is it in for us?
Well, it would be, let's see, that district. Yeah, which area? Which area? That's area 6 out
I'm
here?
just curious.
Primarily 5.
5, okay, yeah. Box Elder, out towards New Underwood.
Oh, that's area 5. Okay.
Yeah, so that's your area. There you go.
Sounded familiar.
It did.
And talking, they want to get the pipe in because they got the Air Force money, but they also want to help anybody along there that might need quality water. And hopefully that they can connect with Box Elder to hit some of the areas that are already having issues that are connected through other networks. And so this feels more like a possible solution to many problems that have arisen. And so I'm optimistic, but the way he told us, he's like, we got our money, we got a time frame, get out of our way, let us build it, and then we will make sure we can try to connect as many people as possible so they can then keep the system running. So I'm optimistic that it will hit.
Yeah, I think so. As far as the source, the options is to drill a new well out there in the Box Elder or Black Hawk area. But there is an existing well out there that they're talking to the owner about possibly purchasing, and that's $1 million gallon a day water well. So
$1 million gallons a day?
700 gallons a minute. Well, that's a good well. So, Dan?
Well, it's apparent to me that there's a lot of trains leaving a lot of stations here. We're going to see legislation in Pierre regarding this Missouri River pipeline, and to me it's apparent it's way beyond our control. For me, the best logic would be if they'd say, well, let's really fund a water source here out on the west end of things and get that started, and maybe look to the future. There's an article in the paper, today, I forget if it was that one or another one, but they're looking at meeting needs, up to 2075. It's pretty clear that they can easily meet the needs around here with water that's here now. At what point in time we need Missouri River water. I guess it'll just be, for me, wait and see what they do down there in Pierre. It might be pretty crazy.
Well, my thought is I'm an engineer, water engineer, and it's going to take, Lewis and Clark's been going for 30 years and they still haven't got it built out yet. And so it's not going to happen overnight to get Missouri River water out. It's going to be a lot of years to get out here. And if we use the local source like Mass and Formation Water and build pipelines east, towards Wall and so forth, New Underwood, that they could hook up to when they get here with Missouri River water, something like that. Somebody should be thinking about doing that. And that would be a short-term fix. Like for New Underwood, they're short of water. Box Elder's short of water. That whole area is short of water. So, and good water I'm talking about. So, I'm glad to see something's happening with that project out there. So, is that the end of the discussion? Does somebody else have some input?
For me.
Yeah, it was a good meeting with Glenn Kane. I'm glad we went. Okay. Item 14, update on erosion control projects. I guess that's you two, information only.
Shall I try to stretch this one out?
No.
If we're not careful, we're going to be done before 5 o'clock.
Yeah, well,
Hold over your head.
Well, there isn't much to report. I thought by now perhaps this land exchange for the Wager property on the north side of Star Village where we're working would have made it to Public Works Committee, but apparently there's some documentation that needs to be worked through before it gets there, and it's taken a little while, so it'll be at least another 2 weeks before it gets on the Public Works Committee agenda. But the wheels are turning in the background. Everything looks likely that transfer will occur, which really is neither here nor there from our water standpoint, but I guess I certainly consider that if that happens, it will be very much a value-added sort of circumstance. I have initiated discussions with Marcia Elkins, who's with the National Guard, regarding possibilities of a project out at basically the West Camp Rapid, the Guard Camp area west of Stevens, and that would likely be done in conjunction with Stevens High School also. She remains interested. We really haven't had time but to say, well, let's get together on it and get started. For us to do anything there, they're going to have an environmental assessment in place, so it
Thanks
takes
for coming.
some time. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Certainly, when I visit with her, a couple of the main points, or one key one will be, and we talked to her some time ago, she wasn't sure, just to what extent they would be able to provide labor, certainly equipment, but of course, to run the equipment, they have to provide the labor. Our experience, which has primarily been with the Star Village area, there's not a lot of labor, just laborers, volunteers coming out of the woodwork, and I think that's one thing I'll be emphasizing with her, is we're going to need a lot of manpower as part of their contribution. We thought maybe this would shape up earlier. We managed to stay pretty busy at Star Village, and is really best left on a back burner. I think it's feasible for us, though, to put together something out on the west side of town, kind of get some experience in that red shale, and I guess I'll keep working in that direction and see where it goes.
On the school mines project, has there been any movement on that $5,000 we gave them?
I think they're waiting for spring to.
Oh, okay.
Or you mean in terms of getting the contract in place?
Yeah.
I haven't heard any more on it.
Have you heard anything, Dan, on that one?
I'm sorry, I missed.
On the school mines, that extra $5,000 we gave them for when?
They haven't gone back to me on anything.
Okay.
So, no, we haven't signed anything on that one.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Okay, thanks for the update. Item 15, report on the progress of the admin contract committee. Thomas, that's your item.
So the committee and I have been talking. We got a proposal from Dan Mullally. We like the proposal. So right now we're asking for Dan to write it up more formally, and then we will negotiate with that just to make sure everything is smoothed out and all concerns are addressed, and we hope to have a possible contractual agreement with Dan to be voted on in March.
Very good. Thanks for doing that. Chair comments? I was gonna talk about the pipeline, but we already did that, so that's kind of what was on my agenda here recently, so I don't really have anything to add. Are there any items from directors?
I'll start it out. My term as a director ends in December of this year, and just for your information, I have decided that I will not run for re-election. So if anybody knows somebody in my area, District 9, that might be interested, please encourage them to run. And if they need help with circulating petitions, I would be glad to do that. In general, my area covers St. Martin's, West Boulevard, Founders Park, and to the west side of Horace Mann School.
Okay. Any other items from directors?
I want to just mention to everybody, I don't know if you've all, well, I think you have, because the last meeting, there was a couple here talking to us about it, but just a little ways down the road, up on Anderson Road, you should go down, not that far. If you haven't driven by that property that the county is considering to allow a massive housing development to go into, you should. I mean, I'm not real sure how it impacts us or what we ultimately might have an issue with, but it's a good example of what's going to keep happening around here if this kind of thing goes through. I mean, it's just atrocious what they're.
How many?
What they're.
Over 400.
400.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
It's, as a state agency, it's kind of, I mean, I've had some issues with some other things in my tenure on here too that I totally didn't agree with what's going on, but as a water development district, I don't know if we should be taking
That's what I say. I don't
political
know
political
if we get
positions.
involved in any way, it'll probably be eventually in the future on some mitigation issues or something.
Yeah.
That happens.
Is there city water out there?
No.
No?
No.
They're gonna build a 21-inch pipeline along Longview.
21-inch pipeline?
Feed that area, because to the north, there's something like 1,200 acres. They're gonna put another 1,200 homes north of Longview along Anderson.
Now, who's they?
Skull.
They're going to put in a 21-inch
Didn't they
water
already
line?
get
Well, that's what the
Yeah.
TIF is for the infrastructure to do the road and the pipeline.
That's a big pipeline.
Yeah. Well, they're expecting a lot of growth out there.
That'll carry a lot of water.
It will.
I mean, it's basically on line to create a whole different little city,
Right.
out there.
Minnehaha County, Sioux Falls, they know how to develop things out there. The county won't allow a property owner to develop a half a mile from town or a mile from town, and no infrastructure and all that stuff, versus what happens out here.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
Director,
Dan was first.
Brent, go ahead.
I was just gonna add, the northern section of it is a wetland according to the Army Corps, so, just so you know.
So they'll have to mitigate that or not do it.
Well, where are they getting their water from for the 21-inch water line?
Rapid Valley.
Rapid Valley.
Oh, from Rapid Valley.
I think so.
That's a big pipeline. Go ahead, Wendy.
This is what Bob and Mary Anderson were talking about the last meeting.
Yes.
And yes, Rapid Valley. So they are actually on Rapid City Water. They were asked to get on Rapid City Water. And they were talking about well water, possible, what's the word I'm looking for, contamination of well water. Because yes, it's classified as, and I looked it up and I can't remember what it was. It's a P something wetland, which actually is built on a regular basis. And it was discovered that it was Skull, and that I understand there's a traffic study. There's a couple other things involved, but that I know of, they have their they have what they need in place at the moment to build as far as licenses and county. But full disclosure, a very good friend of mine is Ann Hitka, who's comptroller of Skull. So, and I haven't talked to her about any of this, because it would be unprofessional to do that. But I do know, and you even said so yourself, Mr. Chairman, last time, is Skull is a pretty reputable company, and it would be hard to believe that they don't have all their licenses and stuff in place.
I'm sure they do. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we part of that discussion we had, when it was, what planning department is?
Yes,
Is
sir.
this county planning, or is it city, both of them reviewing this thing because
Yes,
of where
sir.
it's located? And
Both have to be.
and they were, and
Yes,
they were
sir.
gonna,
I would think so,
they were gonna
yes,
go
sir.
follow that up and see if they could
Yeah.
learn who is making these decisions.
I don't know. I know I'm not asking her, because that's not how I would go about it. If I were actually asked to look into it, I would make the necessary calls to the county and go about it that way, because
That'd be the right thing to
she's
do.
a 20-year friend,
Yeah.
and that's a different type of relationship.
Yeah. Cheryl?
What a different note. We need a photograph of Wendy, Thomas.
No.
All right.
No.
That's very important.
You guys are missing.
That's okay.
Come on.
I'll
Send
stay.
me one. Email one to Dan.
Okay.
Email it to Dan, and Dan will make sure he gets it to me.
What's that for?
The website.
Website.
They
Our
actually-
lovely
And I
website.
want to, since I haven't given my comment, I want to say Dan and Cheryl, the website looks great.
Yeah, it
And
does.
I saw the pictures, and I have to say, when I was looking up, I was a little bit jealous that I didn't have my picture up there. I was like, and then I'm like, do I really want my picture up there? But I did notice, and it does look more professional, and I enjoy it. So I want to give
Nice.
props to the directors and the admin that had
Very,
worked on
very
it.
nice.
So just send them to Dan.
Awesome.
At my convenience.
Soon.
At your convenience, you'll never get it.
I know.
Here's what we look like.
I don't take good pictures.
Hey, there's some good looking
Oh,
people.
good.
There's some good looking people.
That's very nice.
One guy's got a tie on.
Maybe attorney.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it'd be nice to fill the gap up there instead of having,
I could have worn my
I'm okay
practice
with
tie
mine.
that day.
you're okay with yours.
I like
Okay.
it.
Are there any other items from directors? If not, we'll move on to admin.
Okay. Thank you, Director Harris, for letting us know about your intention not to run. You all probably know that all the odd numbers are the vacancies coming up here, so I'll just mention that again. I don't have too much more that I haven't mentioned. There is a Terrasite Design did send their first invoice to us. That's Jason Phillips, the inventory, impervious surface inventory. And that's about it.
Okay.
I'm leaving tomorrow at dark 30.
Well, have a safe trip. Okay, thank you. Now, items from public. You got an item from public?
I do. I just wanted to introduce myself.
Come you up and speak in the microphone so we keep a record of all this stuff?
Kaylee Snyder with Black Hills Council. I just wanted to introduce myself. I don't know if you know who we are.
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I came to a meeting last year and it was very informative, so planning to try to come to your meetings more often, so I just wanted to introduce myself so every time you see me, you're not like, who's that person?
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Can you tell us when yours are, so we can...
Our next one it's coming up in January, so we do quarterly ones. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but I can get that and email to you. I believe I still have your email. Or
Well, maybe send it to
Yeah.
our administrator, and he can tell all of the directors then at one time.
Yeah,
If that
I can
works.
do that. Yeah. But I do know the one's coming up at the end of January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for my information and maybe some others, could you just tell us what you do?
Okay, so Black Hills Council, we serve 9 counties, all on the western side of South Dakota and the cities. We assist them with different things such as planning. Some of my coworkers, we do SRF, State Revolving Fund. We assist with funding of infrastructure. Myself personally, I do long-range planning, so I'll do comprehensive plans and mitigation plans. So personally, for me, this is very beneficial because when I do mitigation plans, I'm looking at like flooding and that type of thing, and making sure people have clean water. So that's helpful for me, but also our organization as well. But yeah, anything kind of planning, whenever cities and counties need us, we're there. So
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for coming,
Anything?
appreciate it. All right. Adjournment. Declare the meeting adjourned
I don't know.
at
4:30.
4:30.
It's got to be a record.
It's a record.
Congratulations.
I'm allowed to leave for another hour.
We are moving in the right direction. We are.
Was that a motion or just?
No, I just declared it adjournment.
Which I think is legal,
Is or isn't legal?
but I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is.
In case it isn't, Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Chairman said it's legal, it is.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
What's new with you, Barry?